Come on.
Atlanta, it's time to rise and shine.
Rise and shine.
You're tuned in to the new Primetime in the morning.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Primetime in the morning. I'm your girl, Edith Sharp, bringing you all the energy you need to kick off this beautiful Thursday, January 23rd, 2025. And right here with me, as always, my partner in Primetime, Ruben Larkin. Ruben, how are you feeling this morning?
Edith, I'm feeling great. Maybe even fantastic. You know me. I had my coffee, got a little morning stretch in, and I'm ready to tackle the day. Good morning, everyone out there. Whether you're on your way to work, getting the kids ready, or just rolling out of bed, we're here to start your day off right.
That's right, Ruben. We've got a packed show for y'all today. Coming up, we'll be diving into the latest headlines.
Ooh, here we go. So buckle up, y'all. It's going to be a fun morning. You're listening to Primetime in the Morning with Edith Sharp and Ruben Larkin. Let's start the day with some good vibes. Here's the latest, Edith. A$AP Rocky assault trial. Witness reportedly plans to testify about prop gun. A$AP Rocky's assault trial is underway. Earlier this week, jury selection for A$AP Rocky's criminal assault trial finally began. Reportedly, the rapper appeared in court in downtown Los Angeles today, where he rejected a plea deal. According to Megan Cuniff, prosecutors offered Rocky a 180-day jail stint, 3 years probation, and a 7-year suspended prison sentence if he were to plead guilty to one assault charge. He's facing 2 felony counts of assault with a semi-automatic firearm, and if convicted, could spend up to 24 years in prison. Cuniff provided a brief update on the case on X today, sharing some footage of A$AP Rocky entering the courthouse. According to her, his lawyer, Joe Tacopina, revealed in court yesterday that a witness plans to testify about a prop gun Rocky allegedly had. At the time, he's accused of shooting at A$AP Relly. Allegedly, this was never pointed at Relly, and only fired as a warning after he followed Rocky. Prosecutors took issue with the fact that Tacopina did not inform them of the prop gun defense until late Monday. This is a straight ambush, Los Angeles County Deputy District Attorney John Lewin claimed. He also described this as a brand new defense, calling the witness someone they've never been able to talk to. Los Angeles County Superior Court Judge Mark S. Arnold said that any oral or written statements from potential witnesses must be disclosed at least 30 days ahead of trial. I don't think it's fair that he waited until this long to disclose the starter pistol. I just don't believe that you're playing fair, he told Tacopina.
This latest update comes after Rocky's legal team complained about a lack of representation in the jury pool. Reportedly, out of 106 potential jurors, only 5 of them are Black. We're in downtown Los Angeles, not a small town in Montana. We're troubled by that, to say the least, Tacopina said. So we have to talk about Diddy. Diddy accuser breaks silence to detail violent allegation. A woman who filed a lawsuit against Diddy last year has spoken out. Ashley Parham, who accused Diddy of allegedly raping her in a lawsuit filed in California last year, has broken her silence on the allegation. She detailed the alleged incident while speaking with Ashley Banfield of News Nation for a new interview. Parham claimed she met Diddy through a man named Shane Pierce, who she ran into at a bar. Recalling the alleged story, she said she encountered Diddy for the first time at Pierce's house. He basically started threatening me with human trafficking and that they could take me anywhere and sell me, she explained. Parham alleged Diddy got extremely angry and sexually assaulted me vaginally with the TV remote, extremely violently. She added, they took turns raping me and Sean Combs raped me anally. Shane Pierce also raped me, but vaginally, and the bodyguard guy, he raped me as well, while Sean Combs was sitting in a chair, naked, filming it and jerking off to watching me being raped. From there, Parham claims that Diddy allegedly bragged to have paid to have Tupac killed and tried to bribe her stay silent. Diddy and his legal team have already denied the allegation. They provided the following statement to News Nation in response to the interview. As the Contra Costa Sheriff's Department confirmed, her report was thoroughly investigated, and it was determined the claims were unfounded. Mr. Combs was nowhere near Orinda, California, on the day she claimed she was assaulted. There is no evidence that Mr. Combs was ever in the same room as Ms. Parham. She is completely unbelievable, and no sane person who views the evidence will credit her story.
Parham's interview with News Nation comes as Diddy remains behind bars in Brooklyn, while awaiting trial in his case regarding charges of alleged sex trafficking and racketeering. He's already pleaded not guilty to the alleged crimes. His trial will kick off in May. Jim Jones fuels Cameron feud with explosive NYC performance. Jim Jones and Cameron's beef continues. Jim Jones and Cameron have traded various jabs this month, and it looks like their feud isn't slowing down anytime soon. In December, 50 Cent joined Cam for a conversation on his YouTube show, Talk with Flea. At the time, they reflected on Fifth bringing Jim Jones and Joel Santana out at a show in 2007. Cam admitted that this didn't sit right with him, calling the move devious. From there, Jones appeared on Justin Layboy's Respectfully podcast, where he came to his own defense. Them nutkers ain't got nothing else to think about but capo. I did a lot for them nutkers in their life, you heard? Both of them, he said in part. Pause though. Get off my deck. The back and forth certainly didn't stop there, however. Cameron proceeded to go off on Jones during an episode of his talk show, It Is What It Is. He called Jones a fan, insisting that they didn't grow up together in Harlem. You were fanned out and begged Nux to come to your house after you heard all these mixtapes, he said. That's how you got in. He went on, claiming that Mays decided to help Jones because they thought he was a nice guy. Jones wasted no time and teased a new diss track directed Cameron shortly after. He even shared footage of him performing it in front of a mural honouring their late friend and Cam's cousin, Derek Bloodshed Armstead. All of this has sparked a debate among fans about which performer is in the right. While this is up in the air, Jones joined Cash Cobain on stage during his show in New York City recently.
He reaffirmed his Harlem roots with a performance of his This S.H. T Still in Harlem remix. It's Dipset for life, he also told the crowd. Now it's time to talk sports on Primetime in the morning. NBA Power Rankings. Which players are under the most pressure? We're 2 weeks out from the NBA trade deadline, and tensions are high across the league. Will superstar Jimmy Butler be in another city before the month comes to a close? Have the Cleveland Cavaliers and Oklahoma City Thunder solidified their spots in the standings for the rest of the regular season? The pressure is on for teams and players to perform as we approach the midway point of the 2024-25 NBA season. This week, we asked our NBA insiders to break down the player under the most pressure on each team. Whether it's concerning the February 6 trade deadline, end-of-season awards, or general pressure for postseason success, which names should we be watching for the rest of the season? Here are this week's updated power rankings for all 30 teams. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander might be on the path to claiming his first MVP this season, as Oklahoma City cruises toward claiming the West top seed for the second straight season. Fair or not, Gilgeous-Alexander will likely deal with some harsh scrutiny if the Thunder don't make a deep playoff run, and perhaps even if the season doesn't end with a championship parade through Bricktown. As even-keeled as any superstar in the league, Gilgeous-Alexander is well equipped to handle the pressure that comes with being the face of a contending franchise. At 36-6 through the first 42 games, the Cavs are officially on a 70-win pace, which unofficially means the measure for success for this Cavs team and lead guard Donovan Mitchell has entered a different stratosphere. Now it's championship or bust, and Mitchell, as the face of the franchise, has to be the guy to lead them there. He leads Cleveland in points, 23.3, and steals 1.4, while the rest of the Cavaliers do their part for team success. As the top player on a team looking to win back-to-back championships, it's Jason Tatum. He's once again an MVP candidate, a shoo-in to start on an all-star squad and headed for another All-NBA selection. There are high expectations for the veteran guard in Boston, but it's not a bad situation to be in. Memphis surpassed last season's wins total Monday, rallying from a 16-point deficit to hand Minnesota, its second consecutive loss. The Grizzlies used to be all about the Ja Morant show, but the new offense emphasizes squeezing contributions from multiple sources on a nightly basis. Morant is ineligible to win any postseason awards after missing his 18th game last week, but that's the least of his concerns with his sights set on carrying Memphis beyond the second round of the postseason for the first time during his Grizzlies tenure. One of the talented young players on Houston's roster, Cam Whitmore, is on a team-friendly deal that runs through 2026 to 27 with salaries of $3.4 million, $3.5 million, and $5.5 million. The problem is he hasn't become a consistent mainstay in the rotation. The 20th pick of the 2023 draft, Whitmore has demonstrated his ability as a scorer, shooting 43.9% from the field. But he was out of Houston's rotation the majority of the first 2 months this season and has expressed frustration with his current role. Although GM Rafael Stone doesn't anticipate making changes to the roster, a change of scenery might be beneficial for Whitmore. Jamal Murray came into this season with arguably the most pressure of any Nuggets player. When Murray is at the top of his game alongside three-time MVP Nikola Jokic, the Nuggets are capable of contending for a title. Murray battled injuries last season and struggled this summer with Team Canada at the Olympics. But in the past month, he has shown improvements. Before a 9-point outing Tuesday against the 76ers, in his previous 4 games, Murray was averaging 29 points, 5.7 assists, and 57.5% shooting. He scored 45 points, making 18 of his 26 shots in a win over Dallas. If Murray remains healthy, the Nuggets with Jokic can beat anyone. He hasn't played a game yet this season, but center Mitchell Robinson, still rehabbing from ankle surgery last May, figures to be a factor in one of 2 ways. He'll either contribute as a badly needed rim protector for an underwhelming defense and as an offensive rebounder in a heavily spaced offense, or he could be used as a trade candidate to get a player who can reliably provide bench depth. One way or another, Robinson's value will help determine whether the Knicks can contend for a title. Chris Middleton was the Bucks' most efficient player by the end of last season's first-round playoff loss to the Pacers, carrying the team with Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo hampered by injuries. Yet, Middleton has not been able to find anything close to that rhythm this season, especially after missing the first 21 games following surgery on both ankles. He has recently been coming off the bench as he attempts to play his way back and develop better chemistry on the floor with Lillard and Antetokounmpo. Milwaukee has been searching desperately for upgrades to its roster, which puts pressure on the 33-year-old Middleton to stay healthy and prove he can contribute to team success. James Harden has been everything and more for the Clippers since his arrival early last season. With Paul George and Russell Westbrook gone, Harden has returned to a more vintage form, averaging 21.3 points, 8.1 assists, 5.8 rebounds, 1.4 steals, but also 4.6 turnovers through 40 games. Even with Kawhi Leonard slowly ramping back up, Harden will still need to produce, setting up Ivica Zubac for easier baskets, finding Norman Powell in his spots, and scoring. Tyrese Halliburton will need to keep up his current form for a Pacers team that had a rough start to the season, but is still looking for the same postseason success it had last year. Indiana has won 9 of its past 11 games, and Halliburton is averaging 19.0 points and 9.5 assists on 50% shooting, 40% from 3. Since the start of January, by far the best month of his season. Luka Doncic has reached a level of superstar status where a lack of a championship ring is perceived as a reason to criticize. Dallas' season so far has been a disappointing follow-up to the first finals appearance of the Doncic era. The Mavs are only a few games above .500 primarily because Doncic has played only 22 games while dealing with injuries, including the calf strain that has sidelined him since Christmas. For the Mavs to make a second-half run similar to last season, Doncic must get in much better shape than he was in entering the season after he missed all of training camp and preseason because of another calf injury. Austin Reeves has blossomed into LA's third-best player in his 4th season, putting up career highs in points, 18.4, and assists, 6.0, per game. He deserves major praise for ascending to this point after entering the league undrafted. But the bigger the profile, the bigger the expectations, and Reeves has battled through recent struggles while shouldering more on-ball duties on offense. He's averaging a career-high 2.5 turnovers, and with opposing teams targeting him in one-on-one matchups on defense. Both De'Aaron Fox and the Kings have plenty at stake based on whether he can make an All-NBA team for the second time in 3 years. Doing so would make Fox eligible for a Supermax extension this summer, allowing Sacramento to pay him more than any other team. If Fox isn't eligible and won't sign a smaller extension of up to 4 years, the Kings might have to decide between allowing him to play out the final year of his contract or trying to get value back via trade before he can leave as an unrestricted free agent. This stretch starting in place of injured Jalen Suggs has been important for Cole Anthony to prove he belongs in Orlando's rotation after playing more than 15 minutes, just 4 times in Orlando's first 25 games. The results have been mixed. Anthony has topped 20 points 3 times, including both Magic wins, since becoming a starter, but has been held to 12 points or fewer 4 times. If Orlando doesn't believe Anthony is capable of providing efficient offense, he could be a logical fit for a team looking for a veteran at the deadline. It didn't take long for Wolves fans to become disillusioned with Julius Randle. Months after a trade that brought Randle to Minnesota for franchise stalwart Karl Anthony Towns, The Wolves are fighting for a spot in the play-in tournament. Randall has not found chemistry with the group and has the rest of the season to either figure it out in Minnesota or start auditioning for his next landing spot. His name is almost certain to be floated in trade speculations in coming weeks, and Randall owns a player option for next season worth nearly $31 million. Trae Young, in his 7th season, will be extension eligible this summer. Will he feel pressure because of that alone? Probably not. But he's Atlanta's franchise player for a reason. That said, the Hawks landed seemingly a perfect backcourt mate for him this past offseason in Dyson Daniels, who has had a breakout season and leads the league in steals per game. A deep playoff run led by Young would allow the Hawks to feel better about a big extension, even if such a deal is the likely outcome regardless. Being at the center of this season's biggest trade deadline drama, Jimmy Butler's future remains very much uncertain leading up to February 6th. After serving a 7-game suspension and averaging a career-low 17.2 points since joining the Heat, all eyes will be on Butler and the Heat the next few weeks, and if he's still in Miami beyond that. It's all gravy for a Pistons team that is on the verge of totaling its most wins since 2018-19, but starting center Jalen Duren hasn't taken the same jump as Detroit's young guards. Eligible for a rookie extension this summer, Duren's playing time and per-minute productivity has declined. He's averaging just 14.3 points and 13.9 rebounds per 36 minutes, as compared to 17.0 and 14.4 in 2023-24. The upside has been his efficiency. Duren is shooting 70%, but rim runners don't typically get compensated like centers who create their own offense. A big three's success, or lack thereof, usually comes down to the third star's ability to sacrifice certain parts of his game and find new ways to contribute alongside the other top players. That process has not been smooth for Bradley Beal thus far, as he's now coming off the bench for the first time in nearly a decade, and his name has been floated in Jimmy Butler trade scenarios. Even having a no-trade clause in his contract won't make Beal immune to feeling the pressure. Whenever Jonathan Kuminga returns from the ankle injury that has kept him out since January 4th, the power forward will need to provide the Warriors with much-needed scoring. Prior to his injury, Kuminga was already under pressure. He's the team's biggest trade asset and a restricted free agent this summer. Kuminga was playing his best basketball of the season before he got hurt. In the 6 games prior to injuring his ankle and leaving with 13 points against Memphis on January 4th, Kuminga averaged 24.3 points. A consummate professional despite his struggles, Zach Collins has fallen behind Charles Bassey as the primary backup to Victor Wembanyama at center. Mired in its second 3-game skid in a little more than 2 weeks, San Antonio has shown deficiencies in its bench as it is starting to understand the weaknesses that opponents are looking to exploit. Specifically, the Spurs struggle to keep up with teams that push the pace, evidenced by losses this month to Chicago and Memphis. The Spurs could be looking to upgrade from Collins as the trade deadline approaches. The Bulls targeted Josh Giddey as the first piece of their rebuild and used Alex Caruso, their most valuable trade candidate, to acquire him. But the results so far have been mixed. Giddey is averaging a career-low 11.4 points, but a career-best 6.7 assists. The Bulls are still being outscored with Giddey on the floor and often have used Lonzo Ball in his place as a point guard in closing lineups. With Giddey set to become a restricted free agent this summer, he still needs to prove he's worth a lucrative extension and continued investment. It remains Joel Embiid. Unlike the past few seasons, though, when the question was whether Philadelphia would have what it takes to make a deep playoff run, this season is instead about whether the 76ers will make the playoffs at all. Plus, Embiid is now sidelined for an undetermined period of time because of a knee issue. Shaedon Sharpe has the most at stake over the second half of the Blazers season, though Sharpe has boosted his scoring average to 18.1 points in year 3. Coach Chauncey Billups moved him to the bench Sunday, citing defense as a concern. Sharpe responded with 23 points as Portland snapped a 5-game losing streak by beating Chicago, with Billups lauding Sharpe afterward for being locked in defensively. Strong play on both ends will help Sharpe secure a lucrative rookie extension when he becomes eligible this summer. Free agent to be Ben Simmons and fellow veteran D'Angelo Russell feel some pressure, as both will look to bolster their paydays this coming summer. With the Nets fading fast and trading off much of their best talent in an effort to improve their draft positioning, the majority of their other players, especially the youngsters, aren't feeling the same pinch. Keep your eye on Hornets center Mark Williams, who is averaging 14.5 points and 9.3 boards and is undoubtedly a solid player with a promising future. He figures to be a mainstay for a rebuilding club. But how much is that future worth? Charlotte is likely still determining that, in part because the 23-year-old Williams, who has battled foot and back injuries, has yet to play more than 43 games in a single season. But he's eligible for an extension this summer, and staying healthy and producing would go a long way toward upping the value of whatever deal he agrees to. New Orleans pulled off its largest comeback in franchise history Monday, rallying from a 25-point deficit for an overtime win behind a 45-point effort from C.J. McCollum. Notably, Zion Williamson wasn't a part of the Pels' fourth consecutive win, sitting out because of an illness. Williamson has missed 34 games this season and has played at least 60 games just twice throughout his 6-year career. Williamson possesses the talent to carry just about any NBA franchise, but has yet to capitalize on that. By now, New Orleans is likely deciding internally whether it's worth sticking by the 24-year-old. Guard Keontae George has spent a majority of his 2 NBA seasons as a starter, but needs to improve his production to make a convincing case to secure his spot in the Jazz's lineup. George has ranked last in defensive box plus minus since arriving in the NBA and is extremely inefficient on offense. 48.7 effective field goal percentage, 17.1 turnover percentage. Toronto made Emmanuel quickly the centerpiece of the OG and Nunabee trade last season, and then gave him a 5-year, $175 million contract this summer to cement him as the team's starting point guard. But injuries have limited quickly to a handful of games this season, and he's shooting below 37.8%. It would be good to see him develop chemistry with Scotty Barnes down the stretch. Kyle Kuzma has not looked quite like himself. He has battled injuries and is averaging just 14.4 points, his lowest since he was with the Lakers in 2020-21. He is shooting a career-low 42.5% and just 25.7% from 3. And on top of that, Kuzma will have to see what happens before the trade deadline. Last season, Dallas wanted to trade for Kuzma, but the forward told Washington he didn't want to be traded to the Mavs.
Presidents in this country have broad powers, but they are not kings. They do not have the power to unilaterally disregard our laws. That's true for Donald Trump. That's true for every president that came before him and every president who will come after him. 2 days into his presidency, Donald Trump is facing pushback over his avalanche of executive orders. This is an extreme and unprecedented act, and this executive order is an assault on the rule of law. 22 state attorneys general, including Matthew Platkin in New Jersey, sued Trump on Tuesday over his executive order undermining birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants. They called it a clear violation of the 14th Amendment. We know that the executive order would wreak havoc and chaos. Hundreds of thousands of children who are born in this country to non-citizen parents each year will suddenly have an uncertain legal status. That's at least 420 children born every single day. If the order is not blocked by the courts and will kick in next month like healthcare. Trump is also facing a lawsuit over his executive order that will make it easier to fire federal workers. Right now, those workers are supposed to be hired based on merit and can't be arbitrarily dismissed. But Trump's order could open the door for career civil servants to be replaced by political appointees. And a union representing 50,000 government employees has sued, saying that could radically reshape federal agencies and disrupt everything from law enforcement to environmental protection efforts. Also on Tuesday, let me make one final plea. Mr. President, Trump faced a rare direct act of resistance when Bishop Marianne Edgar Buddy turned to him as he was sitting in the front row during the inaugural prayer service at the National Cathedral. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. She called on Trump to consider the impact of his crackdown on immigration, and she said fear was spreading among LGBTQ Americans as Trump rolled back protections for transgender people. Trump looked away, but he told the Times, quote, "I wasn't necessarily calling the president out. I was trying to say the country has been entrusted to you." Late last night, Trump berated the bishop on social media, calling her a radical left hardline Trump hater and demanding an apology for the sermon. Meanwhile, the Trump administration is pushing forward with its plans to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives inside the federal government. They've set a deadline of 5 p.m. today for federal agencies to place all their DEI staff on paid leave and come up with plans to shut down their offices. They've also said outgoing staff will be questioned when they leave about whether there are any remaining DEI efforts in place. The executive order that outlines the rollback says that DEI initiatives undermine hard work and individual achievement in favor of a pernicious identity-based system. It marks a 180-degree turn from how the Biden administration saw DEI work, as an effort to support underserved communities and address racial inequalities. And with that, I will welcome you to the Department of State. Colleagues, the 72nd Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. President Trump's first cabinet member, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, has officially been sworn in. For the former senator from Florida, the confirmation process was smooth. The Senate voted 99-0 to approve him. But there's been a new complication for one of Trump's other highest-level picks, Pete Hegseth, for Secretary of Defense. Yesterday, his former sister-in-law submitted a sworn statement to the Senate, saying she saw Hegseth drinking excessively on numerous occasions, including while in his military uniform. She also claimed Hegseth was abusive towards his second wife, leading her to hide in a closet on one occasion out of fear and text for help. According to the affidavit, she did not witness the abuse firsthand, and Hegseth's ex-wife said in her own affidavit there was no physical abuse. But the new allegations are strikingly similar to others that have surfaced about the former Fox News host and Army veteran, including a financial settlement he paid to a woman who accused him of rape. Hegseth has vigorously denied the allegations against him, and Republicans are still pushing his nomination forward. In Gaza, since the moment the ceasefire took effect this weekend, people have been trying to make their way back to their homes to assess the damage. Many of the nearly 2 million people there were displaced at least once during the war, and much of the territory has been destroyed by Israeli forces. The Times spoke with one family from the city of Rafah. Before they were forced to leave, the Dafliz family lived in this 2-story house next to a farm where they kept sheep, rabbits, chickens. They had olive groves and date palms. This was a house that the father of the family had built back in 1971. And like a lot of Gazan families, it was several generations living in the same house. My colleagues Vivian Yee and Bilal Shaber had been reporting on the family's return home after 8 months of living in tents. As soon as the fighting stopped, they decided to try to see it for themselves. They jumped in the car and set out for their old neighborhood, and they're driving around looking for their house, and they just don't see anything, and they realize they had just driven past it without even recognizing it because it was so destroyed. The grandfather who built the house was just so shocked that he kind of lost his breath and had to be taken back to their tent to recover and rest. After absorbing that it was gone, they decided to try to look for anything they could salvage, whether it was winter clothes for their kids or diplomas. But in the end, it didn't find much. Everything they found from this house that 3 generations of this family had grown up in fit into the back of their car. Like a lot of Gazans, they would love to rebuild, given the resources, but they're also just not sure, will this ceasefire last? Is the war actually going to end in any kind of stable way? So, if that happens, they're planning to clear some land and kind of camp out there until they can rebuild. But they're not even sure that will happen. And finally, yeah, we're talking about snow in Florida, folks. Frosted trees and snow are covering the highway. A record-breaking winter storm is sweeping across the southern U.S. So is piling up snow where that just does not happen. Can you believe this picture right now in Baton Rouge, Louisiana? The first ever blizzard warning was issued for parts of Texas and Louisiana. At least 10 people have died in the storm. Thousands of flights have been canceled, airports closed, and whole stretches of highway, including Interstate 10, have been shut down. Still, the rare sight of any snow at all has brought many people outside. In New Orleans, people are using the levees as ski slopes, and kids who've never had any reason in their whole lives to own a sled have been out there sliding down hills on cookie sheets. The last time a lot of the region got this much snow was the Gulf Storm of 1895. The mayor of Pensacola, Florida, where the snow's been stacking up, said some people have tried to downplay the weather, saying, oh, it's just a few inches. He asked them, quote, well, how would someone in Michigan or Minnesota react to a Category 2 hurricane?
Now it's time for the top story on Primetime in the morning. You're playing with one of our biggest wars. Why some Mexican people are upset about Oscar-tipped film Emilia Perez. French director Jacques Audiard's musical about a Mexican drug lord is a frontrunner for the Academy Awards' big prizes. But its depiction of the country is stoking criticism. Rarely is a film so successful with critics and awards voters, yet so controversial to its detractors. Emilia Perez, written and directed by French auteur Jacques Audiard, won both the Cannes Film Festival Jury Prize and a joint Best Actress prize for its 4 leads back in May. More recently, the Spanish-language musical, set in Mexico but mostly filmed in France, has won 4 Golden Globes, 5 European Film Awards, and been nominated for 11 BAFTAs. It's now a favourite to lead the way at this year's Oscars, when the nominations are announced tomorrow. The genre-mixing story of a male Mexican drug lord who transitions into a woman seeking restorative justice for the country's disappeared, dead and missing persons who have been the victim of drug and crime-related violence, might also make history on Thursday, with a nod for actor-lead actress Carla Sofia Gascon. She would be the first trans woman to be nominated for Best Actress. But while the film's characterization of its transgender protagonist has been divisive, the US LGBTQ+ organization GLAAD has called it retrograde. It isn't even currently the most controversial talking point. That would be Emilia Perez's representation of Mexico, which has come under increasing scrutiny as award season has kicked into gear. The film is due to open in Mexico to the general public tomorrow, but there have already been complaints from Mexican critics and industry figures about the negligible involvement of Mexican people among its leading cast and crew, and its depiction of the country, not least when it comes to dealing with such a horrifying subject. Following Emilia Perez's Golden Globe success, there was a flurry of criticism of the film on X from Mexican users. In one post that's been viewed 2.6 million times, Mexican screenwriter Hector Guillen tagged the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, who run the Oscars, the day after the Globes, and published a poster saying, "Mexico hates Emilia Perez, racist Eurocentrist mockery, almost 500k dead, and France decides to do a musical." I tried to copy the Hollywood way of promoting films for awards consideration. You know, when they basically say, "amazing film," Guillen tells the BBC. I wanted to do a counterpart of that. I wanted to get another vision out of what Emilia Perez is to many of us Mexicans. Guillen calls Audiard a great filmmaker, but says the decision to make the vast majority of the movie in studios outside Paris, as well as the way the story treats a painful national topic, has upset many in his social network. There's a drug war, nearly 500,000 deaths since 2006, and 100,000 missing in the country, he says, citing recent Mexican government figures. "We are still immersed in the violence in some areas. You are taking one of the most difficult topics in the country, but it's not only any film, it's an opera. It's a musical. So for us and many activists, it's like you are playing with one of the biggest wars in the country since the revolution in the early 20th century. Part of the plot is about searching mothers of the disappeared, searching for their children, one of the most vulnerable groups in Mexico. And there were 0 words in the 4 Golden Globe acceptance speeches to the victims." Guillen also questions why a decision wasn't made to involve more Mexican people in the production. One of the 4 leading actresses, Adriana Paz, is Mexican. Of the others, Zoe Saldana, who won a Best Supporting Actress Golden Globe, has Dominican heritage but was born in the US. Carla Sofia Gascon is Spanish, from a Madrid suburb, though she has worked extensively in Mexican TV. And the last and most famous, Selena Gomez, is American but with Mexican heritage. Having grown up speaking Spanish but lost her fluency, Gomez had to relearn the language for the role, while her character Jessie was rewritten to make her character Mexican-American rather than purely Mexican. Meanwhile, Saldana's character, Rita, a lawyer, was changed to reflect Saldana's Dominican rather than Mexican background. As for Audiard, he is not a Spanish speaker at all. Their way of making the film is to disregard so many in the film industry in Mexico already talking about this topic, like not considering Mexican screenwriters, or more Mexican actors other than Adriana, who did an amazing job, Guillen argues. He cites as really painful the film's Mexico-born casting director, Carla Hull's comment during a SAG-AFTRA Foundation Q&A that they had searched Latin America and Mexico for actors, but ultimately they believed that they had chosen the best ones for the job. Having a few Mexicans in there does not stop it from being a Eurocentric production, he adds. There could be commercial reasons behind the casting decisions. Gomez and Saldaña are arguably bigger global names for the project than many Mexican actors. In particular, Gomez's performance led to another viral moment of criticism against the film, this time on a popular Mexican film podcast, Hablando de Cine. Actor Eugenio Derbez told host Gaby Mesa that Gomez's Spanish pronunciation was indefensible, leading to Selena Gomez to comment on a TikTok post of the podcast clip. "I'm sorry, I did the best I could with the time I was given." Derbez later apologized for the remark, while Meza says that the wider interview between her and Derbez was not a criticism of Gomez's acting in the film. Indeed, Gomez was nominated for a Golden Globe and a BAFTA, or her Spanish accent, given she was supposed to be playing an American for whom Spanish is not her first language. It was intended to remark that if you don't speak Spanish, you just see her good performance with subtitles, Meza explains. And she does give a good performance. What isn't good is that there's a disconnect between the words she says and her understanding of them. Her body, her voice, her tones say something, but the dialogue doesn't match with what she's saying. And that's not Selena's fault, because I think she wasn't given the proper indications. The tools for her performance. The director is French, and Selena is from the United States, but they're communicating in Spanish. Meza adds that in her opinion, the movie is one that's designed for export. If you go to resorts in Mexico, tourists can buy things that look Mexican, but they're made elsewhere, she says. With this movie, you might see references to Mexican culture, and it might speak about Mexico, but it wasn't made in Mexico. However, amid the flurry of criticism, some accusations about the film are inaccurate. For example, one post on X called the director a Frenchman who'd never set foot in Mexico. Audiard, however, tells the BBC that he went to Mexico several times, looking to shoot the film there, as well as cast the main roles. "I had the idea of making an opera of Emilia Perez, and then I got a bit scared. I felt like I needed to inject some realism into it," he says. "So I went to Mexico, and we scouted there during the casting process as well. Maybe 2-3 times, and something wasn't working. And I realized that the images I had in my mind of what the film would look like just didn't match the reality of the streets of Mexico. It was just too pedestrian, too real. I had a much more stylized vision in my mind. So that's when we brought it to Paris and re-injected the DNA of an opera within it. And also," he adds, "it might be a little bit pretentious of me, but did Shakespeare need to go all the way to Verona to write a story about that place?" Judging by the film's success in awards season, many critics and voters must agree with Audiard, or at least believe Emilia Perez has strong artistic merit, regardless of this issue. "I felt it was hugely fresh as a piece of work when I saw it," James Mottram, a British film critic, says. "I mean, a brand new take on the cartel story, a very unusual musical, a transgender story. Just combining those three elements is a feat of narrative dexterity. I admire the bravery of the film more than anything. Audiard has worked in the crime genre before, if you could call this a crime film, with movies like The Beat That My Heart Skipped, but this felt brand new. And as a critic, that's what you're always looking for, someone who's taking on divisive subjects and putting a fresh spin on them."
Well, Ruben, that's going to do it for us this morning on Primetime in the Morning. Can you believe how fast the time flew by today?
It really did, Edith. I feel like we just started, and now here we are wrapping things up. But hey, when you're having a good time, that's how it goes, right?
Absolutely. And we hope all of you listening had just as much fun as we did. Thanks for spending part of your morning with us. It means the world.
Seriously, you guys are the best. Whether you were sipping coffee, on your morning commute, or sneaking in some prime time at work, don't worry, we won't tell. Thank you for tuning in.
And if you missed any part of today's show or want to catch up on our best moments, head over to the Primetime in the Morning podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcasts. And this has been Primetime in the Morning.
Come on, Atlanta. It's time to rise and shine.
Rise and shine.
You're tuned in to the new Primetime in the Morning.